We're not a punk band. Look, we don't have leather jackets.
It's a monster, like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
I can never possibly be as big as the Beatles.
My ambition in being in a band was more to be Keith Richards than to be Mick Jagger.
David Byrne, Tina Weymouth, Chris France, and Jerry Harrison, 4 musicians who comprised one of the most individual and inspirational bands to emerge from the fertile New York new wave scene of the 1970s. I'm Stuart Maconie on BBC Radio 2, and for the next hour, I'll be charting their story, following their rise from early days as a Rhode Island art school group, being discovered at CBGB's in New York, to starring in perhaps the most acclaimed rock movie ever made, Stop Making Sense. Who are they? The name of this band is Talking Heads.
Psycho killer,
Psycho Killer, and She Was, Once in a Lifetime, Burning Down the House. Just some of the more familiar tracks from Talking Heads. I'll be celebrating their success, as well as talking to Seymour Stein, Brian Eno, key figures who worked with them over their 15-year existence, and checking out what each member is up to now.
well, we know where we're going, but we don't know where we've been, and we know what we're knowing, but we can't say what we've seen, and we're not little children, and we know what we want, and the future is certain,
This is Chris France, and you're listening to Burning Down the House on BBC Radio 2.
We're on a road to nowhere.
And I had a choice of, music, painting. Which one should it be? And I kind of thought that, well, I'll never really be a success at music. I can never possibly be as big as the Beatles. And so I chose to go to art school, which is where I met Tina and where I met David. I loved painting, I loved to draw, but I felt like something was missing all this time. And so around I guess it was my third year, I brought my drum set up to school and started playing with a soul band. Then one day, a guy came to me and also to David and said, would you guys play something for the soundtrack of this movie I'm making? That was when David and I got together at the little carriage house where Tina was living, and we played this sort of cacophonous piece of music, and he recorded it for his soundtrack. And when it was over, David looked at me and he said, well, I can play other kinds of things too. And I thought, well, so can I. And then we started this little band together called the Artistics. And after we left school and got my degree, at which point I moved to New York along with Tina, and we moved into a loft on the Lower East Side. That was the genesis of Talking Heads.
Chris and Tina were soon joined in their loft by David Byrne, co-founder of the Artistics, sometimes called the Autistics. Their loft was a stone's throw from Hilly Crystal's folk club, CBGB's, an acronym for Country, Bluegrass and Blues, and one of the few places in New York where fledgling bands could experiment and hone their material. CBGB's was grungy, grimy, and embodied the punk philosophy that asserted anyone could be in a band and anything went.
I'm Vivian Goldman in New York. I'm a music writer who was around with the early Talking Heads. I first went to CBGB's in the mid-70s, and at that time CBGB's was the epicenter, the vortex, one might say, of the American punk scene. And it was located, and in fact astonishingly still is located, on the Bowery, which of course has long been synonymous with flop houses, crack addicts, homeless, schizos, and that was the sort of personnel of the neighborhood. It was a very grungy venue before that word became fashionable. It was really grotty, and I think you'd be safe to say that it was sort of the armpit of American civilization, and a stinky one at that. There was always like a lot of beer on the floor. It was very dark. It was very, very smoky. It was a sort of mosh pit in itself. When you went to CBGB's, you knew that if you really weren't into you better bring your earplugs, because it was pretty much uniquely that sort of thing.
CBGB's gave birth to many bands during this era, including Blondie, the Ramones, Television, and the Patti Smith Group, as well as Talking Heads. But before David and Chris could audition for the club, they had to find a new name for their band.
We had a whole list of names. And one of our friends from the Rhode Island School of Design was visiting us. He said, I've come up with a great name. I just got it out of TV Guide, Talking Heads. And Talking Heads was sort of the code word for the most boring yet most informative format of television, which was where you just see the man or the woman's head and shoulders and they're talking. And so we thought, wow, that's a really cool name. It's got the same amount of syllables as Rolling Stones, but yet it doesn't connote any particular type of music. It could be any kind of music. And so we thought, well, let's try Talking Heads. So I printed up Talking Heads on a T-shirt, and I wore it to Washington Square Park in Greenwich Village, and I got a really strong reaction from people. They would actually, one guy actually said, "Talking Heads, is that the name of the band?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "That's a terrible name." About 2 weeks later, our picture was on the cover of the Village Voice.
By the middle of 1975, the burgeoning CBGB scene was firmly established as a musical movement. But at that point, it didn't have a name. Then, a rash of posters began to proclaim, "Punk is coming, punk's coming." Many people thought it was the name of a band. It's not. But it turned out to be a newspaper dedicated to the new sounds and styles. Several of the bands, though, weren't too happy with the term punk, and so another label began to emerge, New Wave.
Talking Heads was called a punk band when we first came out, and of course we were spent all our time denying it and saying, we're not a punk band. Look, we don't have leather jackets, but it didn't do us any harm. The label wore off in a couple of years, and we got loads of press because we were all lumped together.
Actually, New Wave was coined by Seymour Stein because punk probably came out of the image of the Ramones and Punk magazine. So none of us really thought that punk was such a great term. You know, it seemed like a throwback to the past, to Marlon Brando or something like that, and we all thought of ourselves as modern. And Talking Heads really did not fit typical punk. We just didn't fit into that, what they would call today, a format. Seymour said in France, the cinema, they call it Nouvelle Vague. Let's call it New Wave. And so he invented that as a marketing term. Punk did not fit an existing niche, and so they found it not only unpalatable but unmarketable. And so New Wave was a way to just kind of polish it up and make it sound like something a little more serious than punk. And I think that this term New Wave was very helpful, and it was helpful for getting us over, you know. And Seymour was really thinking ahead. He was thinking about if he can get Talking Heads played on the radio, and it wasn't even an original tune of ours that first got played that became a national hit. It was an Al Green tune called Take Me to the River that was off of our second album. But he thought, if I can break this band, then I can break the others, and the Ramones will follow. And so it worked, you know. It finally did work, and it took a long time, and it took a lot of touring. But I think, you know, at the end of 5 years of constant touring and making albums, you know, people were ready to listen.
As the CBGB's bands became a word-of-mouth cult in New York, so various record industry people moved in to check out the new talent. Seymour Stein, head of Sire Records, courted Talking Heads assiduously and attempted to persuade them to sign with him, although originally he'd been interested in the Ramones.
I got a phone call from the manager of the Ramones, and he said, you know, the band have written some new songs. Why don't you come down and see them? And I did. And I was standing outside. All of a sudden, I hear, when my love stands next to your love, da 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 da. And like, when it's not love, I was like, what is this? And I just, as I'm talking, I'm moving, you know, like to the music, moving in the door. And I was just mesmerized. At the risk of offending all the other artists I've worked with, I would say this was the moment for me that I will always remember most. The music, the songs, incredible. It was raw. Of course it was raw. It was a three-piece. Tina's eyes were constantly on David, and Chris just drumming out the beat, and David out there looking like he was having a fit almost. And the music was just amazing. Song after song after song. And they had no crew, they had nothing. I mean, when the gig was over, I got up on stage to try to help them pack up. These are things I never did. You know, you use the expression blown away a lot. This was a night I will never forget.
Love Goes to Building on Fire, Talking Heads' debut single released in December 1976, 1 month after the band had finally agreed to sign with Sire Records. Jerry Harrison, former guitarist with the Modern Lovers, gigged with the band occasionally through 1976 while completing his architecture degree at Harvard. He finally became a full-time member in 1977.
I saw them at a club in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I thought that they were an amazing band, but at that point a band certainly in a kind of a young development. Well, I think that the sound they had then really is similar to the sound that we got on the first album. It was very spare. David was playing a lot of 12-string because he wanted to fill things up because he was the only instrumentalist. And Tina would look very intently watching David and watching Chris to follow where she was in the song. She had just recently begun to play bass. So there was this great sense of kind of intensity. David having an intensity and a nervousness about being on stage, and then Tina having an intensity of wanting to do a good job. They called me up in 1976 and said, "Why don't you come down and try out for the band?" I was just about to start architecture school, and I had no money. I was totally broke. So it took me, I think, even a month and a half to get down. So I showed up with just a guitar because there was no room for a keyboard in the van when we finally loaded everybody's. They said, "I thought you were a keyboard player." I said, "Well, I am, but it wouldn't fit," but I brought a guitar. And we went out for some Chinese food, and I think we started to just sort of have a rehearsal around 1 o'clock in the morning. And they said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Why don't I just learn some of your songs?" And I think that by 3 o'clock, we just knew it was just a magical thing. I felt lucky that I was asked to join the band. My ambition in being in a band was more to be Keith Richards than to be Mick Jagger. And so I loved the role I had of bringing these songs to fruition and then adding something that was unique, that was mine to them.
The band developed their live sound at CBGB's before taking off on their first European tour. Music journalist Vivian Goldman remembers those early, legendary live appearances.
When I first saw the Talking Heads, I believe it was 76, possibly 77, but it was just when they were having their first album out. They were really still like a virgin. So I got to see them in what, many would think of as their prime. I suppose their prime did continue for a long time, actually. But they were certainly very dramatic, and I really did adore them. And they had a very different quality, and they very much, even within the CBGB's aesthetic, they did stand out. Because David Byrne managed to do this sort of nerd rock thing where he came on like this mega geek, like the person who would never have a dance at the school prom, and he turned it into, as strong an art image as David Bowie's Drag in his own way, which is quite a remarkable feat. Their image, which was, when I say the word image, I actually mean their reality, was very different from other bands because they had this earnest art school minus some of the English art school eccentricity sort of feeling. And of course they had a female bass player, Tina. Tina was forced by David Byrne to re-audition as bass player because she was a woman. Nonetheless, despite his initial lack of faith, she was an incredibly strong part of the band, and she had this very, gritty presence. She had that, rock solid thing that a bass player needs that came out of her, interest in funk and reggae. And they had Jerry Harrison on keyboard, so I suppose, might have been described as the sex god of the group. He looked a bit more like early Jim Morrison.
I'm Jerry Harrison from Talking Heads, and this is Burning Down the House on BBC Radio 2. Well, the real tour was the one we did with the Ramones, where we played a show at the Roundhouse in June of 1977, which I think was the same time as the Queen's Jubilee. It was a fantastic tour, and perhaps one of the ones I've looked back most fondly on. One of the great things about that tour is we just went all over. We played Penzance, or Penzance, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. And it was a summer that was just the most wonderful weather there. I've never experienced such nice weather. One of those rare times where it's sunny and warm every day. And there was just a great sense of possibilities. We had a party after we played at the Roundhouse where, because of the Ramones, really, the sort of the guys from the Clash and the guys from the Pistols were there, and sort of the punk royalty. You just felt like you were really, really part of something that was exciting.
It was during this tour that the band met and formed a lasting creative partnership with producer and thinker Brian Eno. However, the band recorded Talking Heads 77, their first album, with a pop producer, Tony Bon Jovi. Despite disagreements between band and producer, it was a critical success, not least because of the track Psycho Killer, David Byrne's first attempt at songwriting, its chorus based on a neat reworking of Otis Redding's Fa 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 sad song.
This man, Tony Bon Jovi, told David Byrne, who's a very sensitive guy who could go off his rocker at any second, he told him to sing Psycho Killer. He told him to go get a knife out of the kitchen so that he'd be more emotional about singing it. It was completely the wrong thing to say to David. Thank goodness we had, as engineers, we had Ed Stasium and Bob Clearmountain, a great team there with us. Otherwise, I think we would have just walked out on the whole thing. I think David would have really cracked at that point. I think we almost saw him do it. And it was a blessing. And the next record, Chris and I told Seymour that we really felt strongly that David would crack without the right producer, and that we really needed to have someone who knew how to be both experimental and keep people from getting bored, and at the same time be very sensitive about bringing the best out in us. And so we asked Brian Eno to produce us. And Brian Eno was exactly on the money. He was exactly the right person to bring in. I mean, David loved Brian Eno so much that he tried to become Brian Eno. You know, he dressed like him, he imitated everything. So it was a much better idea than Bon Jovi.
And so began the band's working relationship with Brian Eno, who went on to produce the next 3 Talking Heads albums, as well as working with David Byrne on many separate projects. This collaboration allowed Talking Heads to harden their sound, find a more unique voice, and reach their true potential. Their first hit single came with a cover of Al Green's Take Me to the River.
Hi, this is David Byrne. I think it has a lot of excitement in it and sincere emotion that's missing from a lot of commercial rock and roll. I liked that, and I liked the way he would easily slide between secular references and spiritual references. In one line he'd talk about baptism, and in the next line he'd talk about going out on dates with 16-year-old girls.
Take me to the river, wash me down, want to cleanse my soul, put my feet on the ground, washing me down, washing me,
That's a song they'd been doing live from the very beginning, Talking Heads. And it had a special sort of role in their cosmology, because they were a white, clever, arty band from Rhode Island School of Design, which is where they had started. And to do that song with all its associations of black music was sort of an important gesture for them, because this was at a time when there was still a real big separation between white music and black music, especially that kind of white music and that kind of black music. We had the idea of trying to make it sound like the song got louder and louder all the way through. Well, for technical reasons, it's hard to do that on a record. The only way you can do it is by starting it very quietly, which is not what we wanted. We want to have a lot of impact at the beginning, but to sound like it was just getting louder and louder and louder. And we did this by using a limiter, and we kept raising the volume and increasing the severity of the limiter throughout the track. Now the effect of that is that it just gets more and more crushed and crushed and crushed. It's not actually getting louder, but it makes your ears think they're hearing something that is getting louder all the time. So it's a trick, a psychological trick, but it works very well on that song.
I'm Stuart Maconie on BBC Radio 2, and this is Burning Down the House, the story of Talking Heads. Brian Eno taught the band to think of the studio as an instrument and to manipulate the sounds. After working with David Byrne on the landmark album My Life in the Bush of Ghosts, one of the first records to feature samples and found voices, Eno was ready to head off and explore this new direction on his own, but the band had other ideas.
what happened there was that I'd produced 2 records with them, and then I worked with David on a record we did together called My Life in the Bush of Ghosts. And I was very excited by a new idea, which I shall describe briefly as saying it was an idea to create a music that had the intricacy of African music, but applied to melodies. It's the rhythmic intricacy and interlock of African music, and particularly Central African guitar styles, but applied to the way melodies were made. And when they asked me to make the 3rd record, I said, I can't, because the only thing I want to do is this. That's all I want to do. So whatever you do, I'm going to try to do this with it. And I know when I'm in that kind of mood, I'm not in the mood to serve anyone else's interests. I know what I want to do. And it's not a good qualification for a producer to be in that kind of state of mind, because I'm not interested in shepherding someone else's flock then. I've got my own thing to do. But anyway, they said, fine by us, that's what we'd like to do as well. So I got involved in the thing from the very beginning in that case. And I actually wrote quite a lot of the melodic interlocks. In fact, most of the interlocking melody parts on there were ones I wrote. And I played a fair amount on that record as well. It was diplomatically difficult because even though I did make that caveat very clear at the beginning, it still, I know it still came over as a kind of invasion of territory, that I was taking such a big hand in how the record was not only being made, but how it was being written and thought about and so on.
The most successful single from the Remain in Light set was Once in a Lifetime. This was the song that cemented the group in the pop public's imagination, helped by an extraordinary video in which Byrne jerks around as if being struck by some invisible force. He was becoming fascinated by the trance states that charismatic religious leaders can induce in their worshippers, and modelling both his lyrics and movements on a possessed, preacherly style.
Or ignoring whether you believe it or not, or whether you question whether some of the preachers are charlatans or not. If you ignore that, a good preacher or whatever is a good performer. And so I was immediately drawn to this as people who had honed their performance style in front of an audience. They weren't judged by critics or reviews or anyone else. There wasn't anyone else who was kind of boosting up and saying, you should go and see so-and-so, he's really good. They had to prove how good they were every morning or afternoon or night or whatever in front of the congregation. And they kind of live and die and eat by the strength of their performances.
You may find yourself living in a shotgun shack, and you may find yourself in another part of the world, and you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile, and you may find yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife, and you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Letting the days go by, let the water hold me down. Letting the days go by, water flowing underground into the blue again. After the money's gone, once in a lifetime, water flowing underground. And you may ask yourself, how do I work this? And you may ask yourself, where is that large automobile? And you may tell yourself, this is not my beautiful house. And you may tell yourself, this is not my beautiful wife. Letting the days go by, let the water hold me down. Letting the days go by, water flowing underground into the blue again. After the money's gone, once in a lifetime, water flowing underground. Same as it ever was. 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 Water dissolving and water removing. There is water at the bottom of the ocean, under the water.
In 1981, the band expanded into a 9-piece. Their live shows were hugely successful, but their record sales less so. And of course, a bigger band meant smaller wages all round. Chris and Tina formed Tom Tom Club. Jerry Harrison made his first solo album, The Red and the Black. And David Byrne composed the music for Twyla Tharp's ballet, Catherine Wheel. Tom Tom Club's debut album went gold, something that Talking Heads had never achieved. But that, of course, was before the film and soundtrack to Jonathan Demme's Stop Making Sense and David Byrne's famous, rather large, white suit.
I was talking to a friend in Japan, and I was saying, I feel like I'd like to wear some sort of costume. And he just said, well, remember the old theater adage that on the stage everything should be bigger. So I just drew on a napkin a great big suit. And that seemed perfect. It just seemed like funny, and it seemed to have some sort of resonance of the clothing kind of taking over one's body.
This is Tina Weymouth, and you're listening to Burning Down the House on BBC Radio 2. That film is unique. I have to say, even though there's aspects about it that I really hate, at the same time, I have to say, it's a capsule in time. It's like a cocaine-fueled 1980s consumer-minded thing. It's a monster in its own right, and like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. You make it and then it gets away from you.
I was very pleased with the stage show, and I thought, well, I'd really like to capture it somehow. And at some point I made up my mind that if it was to be done, I'd like it to be done on film. The director, Jonathan Demme, approached us and said he'd like to do it. So that was it. Then it was just a matter of finding the money. Well, the initial money came from us, the band, and then the American record company put up some more, and between us we had enough to do it. Much as I could, I wanted to say something with the whole show and not just with the songs. It's certainly a different feeling, but it loses something and it gains something too. It gains something in intimacy. You see the expressions on people's faces close up. You become much more aware of the subtle interactions between the performers on stage. You don't get the feeling of intimacy with the other members of the audience. But that's okay, it's a trade-off. It's almost exactly as it happened, and the editing is very, how should I say, relaxed, as opposed to quick cuts and whatnot.
Stop making sense. Stop making sense. Stop making sense. Make it sense. I got a girlfriend that's better than that. Nothing is better than this.
The film was an amazing, unexpected success. Cinema audiences reacted as if they were at a live gig. Director Jonathan Demme was shocked at such a response to a piece of celluloid. Even today, it's routinely hailed as the best rock movie ever. But if Stop Making Sense was a high watermark for the band, it was in many ways the beginning of the end for Talking Heads. From then on, they never toured. David Byrne became more interested in making movies, and the other members poured their energies into individual projects. They continued to make albums and have successful hit singles, including Little Creatures and Naked, but without the focus and impetus of old.
The end of the Talking Heads was, I guess, around 91, although we had been so inactive for a few years, you could easily say it was earlier. I believe that David announced it, and I think he just got sick of being asked questions about when are the Heads getting back together again. He finally said, we're not. It was not any great plan. It's sort of like we trickled away rather than we stopped.
I didn't handle it all that well. I doubt that anyone ever does. I could have done it a lot better. I'm sure some feelings were hurt. I know mine were hurt sometimes. The timing was not perfect. The way I could have communicated with others more. but, well, that's sometimes happens.
Everyone is trying to get through the fog. The name of the bar is called Heaven. The band in heaven, they play my favorite song. Play it once again. Play it all night long. Heaven is a place, a place where nothing ever happens.
David Byrne, however, had established a reputation as one of pop's most gifted and original songwriters. Some would go so far as to call him a songwriter of genius.
We had a brilliant lyricist in Talking Heads, and his lyrics were all drawn from life. They were all drawn from our conversations, and he was a perfect mimic. So he could render it with all the emotional impact of a conversation in the heat of the passion, of the moment.
The process of jamming and rapping over tracks had been a favourite procedure throughout the group's history. Tina Weymouth remembers the jam session that led to the song, Burning Down the House.
We had been jamming in Chris's and my loft in Long Island City, and there was this phrase that fans of Parliament Funkadelic were chanting when we went to see them at Madison Square Garden. They were saying, "Burn down the house." So Chris was playing this very funky groove on drums, and the rest of us were noodling away on our instruments trying to come up with something really cool, and but not succeeding. And Chris was just trying to like get us worked up, to get us excited. And he was shouting, "Burn down the house." And it got on the tape recorder. We always taped our jams with a little boombox. And so I guess David never realized where he got it, as he very often didn't, because he's the kind of person who doesn't know where he ends and other people begin. And so it suddenly was this song, "Burning Down the House." But themes of buildings on fire are kind of, and little boats adrift are kind of, thematic to David Byrne. If you study his lyrics, they keep coming back.
David Byrne, though, remembers the unusual visual elements of the lyric.
The symbolism of the title, to me, symbolized rebirth and destroying oneself. There's about one group of performers, us, being substituted by another.
What are Talking Heads up to today? Well, they're all still involved in making music, so you won't see any of them appearing on the Spot the Old Rocker lineup on Nevermind the Buzzcocks. Chris Frantz and Tina Weymouth recently released a new Tom Tom Club album called The Good, the Bad and the Funky. They continue to tour. Jerry Harrison has recently started an internet music company, GarageBand.com, where unsigned bands can get help and encouragement. He also still produces extensively. David Byrne made several solo albums exploring his fascination with global music. This led to him setting up the Luaka Bop record label to produce and distribute music from Latin America. He's currently working on a new solo album that'll be released in February next year. Talking Heads won legions of admirers in their 15 years, making a major contribution to the popular music of the 20th century. Seymour Stein, head of Psy Records, believes their music is still influential today.
They had a vision. I think that the term genius gets thrown around a lot. David Byrne is a genius. And I think that Tina and Chris, and later Jerry when he joined, all great. They knew what they wanted. I made them a priority for me, a major, major priority. But with regard to, the Talking Heads lasting as a band for as long as they did, quite frankly, had they been able to remain together, I think they'd be relevant today. I honestly believe that. They had the ability to keep reinventing themselves, and I think that would have continued, had personal issues not gotten in the way. I think that the fact that they've influenced so many, artists and bands that have come after them, whether it's Beck, Blur, Bjork, Radiohead, that's just a few that I could think of, and they're all so different from each other. If there's a common thread that runs through those bands and those artists, I believe they had to have been influenced somewhat by Talking Heads.
I think that the Talking Heads really made a terrific contribution to the way that punk went into new wave, went into, the various cycles that we have seen since then. It was partly because they were true originals. They really had their own shtick, and their shtick came from within and couldn't really be faked. It was just the combustion of those particular personalities. There was something that they did where they bridged that gap between the brain and the pelvis. They connected in a way that not everybody does, because very often people who have sort of clever intellectual lyrics, they go off into some sort of abstract, but they were very rooted around the groin area. As they carried on, partly David Byrne's influence, but also Chris and Tina, they were very receptive to aspects of what is now called world music, which didn't exist as a genre then. They were very receptive to what was the biggest manifestation of world music at that time, to wit reggae and dub, and then later on to more African or a bit Cuban. They managed to incorporate touches of those feelings without losing their integrity as a really American band.
But how was it for them, and what did they see as the legacy of the group?
Uh-oh, it's going to come to me. I'm trying to give an honest answer and not just pull something out of a hat. I'm very happy with the songs, and musically, I think good music gives people reason for hope, and it does for me. When I hear something that moves me, it gives me reason for hope in the world, and it keeps me going. Despite everything else that's going on. I'm very happy with the songs. Mad as to hell about the state of the world. So I flip between being very angry guy and being very happy, very schizophrenic.
I always thought that the Talking Heads could do more. I think the Talking Heads certainly opened the door for a lot of, you might say, for nerd musicians, for musicians who were thinkers first and then musicians second. Because we did it and we were successful at that a lot of bands have been influenced and have come out since then, and that we have a lot more interesting music because people saw the way Talking Heads worked, which was really not traditional to the way bands had come up early.
Sometimes it was difficult being a talking head because we were always kind of pushing ourselves in that band, and we were never content with doing things the easy way or the predictable way. We always felt we had to challenge ourselves, and we felt that we had to do things that were unexpected. And so you could never really coast. Never. Talking Heads was a wonderful and unique group of people, and the chemistry was such that a lot of times we surprised ourselves, sometimes without apparently even trying, and we'd just come up with something like accidentally that would everybody would just say, oh yeah, that's the way we should go with this one. And other times it was more like hard work, because you don't always wake up with a great idea every day. I'm very proud to have been in the band, and when I look back, there's very few things that I would change, except for our sad demise.
I love the music, and I just love the being in the moment of creating it together. It was quite a flight, and like Chris, and I'm sure Jerry would say the same thing, I was really sorry that David Byrne didn't want to continue, and never understood why he wouldn't want to, because everything that he did afterwards was an attempt to recreate what we had. But I don't think there's anything quite so ecstatic as playing with other players who you know are really, really good, and having these moments where everything coalesces and gels and kicks. And there's nothing like it. I mean, it's beautiful.
Almost a decade after their final release as a group, Talking Heads remain one of the most individual, inspirational bands of their era. They proved that art house music can sell. They introduced funk to the white rock mainstream. And they showed that rock movies could be more imaginative than Rock-a-Hula Baby.
Have any questions?
This has been Stuart Maconie with Burning Down the House, the story of Talking Heads, produced by Sue Clark, a Something Else production for BBC Radio 2. 88 to 9.